Hey everyone, welcome to Reddit Readout. Today we are checking out Malicious Compliance. Story 1. I complied and cost my boss his bonus and his job. I'm a corporate professional in middle management. My boss is a senior manager, and he's horrible at his job. Peter principle totally applies. He got his annual goals sent down from the corporate ether, and naturally, he added these things to my list of responsibilities. He would receive a hefty bonus for completing them. I would receive none. He would take all the credit, and tell me I was lucky to have him as a mentor. He had this big shot personality. He was a smooth talker that acted like a celebrity, and he was just too important to be bothered by the people lower on the totem pole. He only wanted to interact with people he could brag about, and beyond puckering to kiss their behinds, he spent most of his time at work perusing dating apps. We were a very in-demand group within the company, and we had a revolving door of people coming to our area daily to get help from us. Non-management employees weren't allowed to have cell phones and didn't have access to email, so stopping in was their only option. My boss got furious if I wasn't in my office to catch all the traffic. Completing his goals for him required me to be out of my office. He demanded that I stay in my office for my full shift every single day and accused me of leaving the property and stealing company time, because if I wasn't in my office, how would he know I was working? So I complied. I stayed in my office. When his annual review came up, he lost his bonus. Because he didn't meet a single goal for the entire year, he fell under intense scrutiny. It was found that he was using company funds and resources to take these dating app encounters to expensive places, and was expensing it as work-related. He also used company funds that were meant for a building upgrade to build a new patio at his house. He asked the contractor, a friend of his, to just do the work and find a way to add the money into the company bill. He was promptly fired. Story 2. If you ain't part of the problem, you ain't part of the solution. Recently commented on a post and remembered this one. Posting it here for your amusement. Over the years, I've developed a seemingly counterintuitive mantra that if you ain't part of the problem, then you ain't part of the solution. This is the story of how this glorious epiphany first dawned on me. I've never been one to take much bullshit from anyone, and especially not one to hand bullshit down to others. Obviously, this led to mine joining the military at a young age, where such attitudes were praised. Somehow, I survived my days in the military with this go-getter attitude to the point of being put as the lead of a division. My department was in charge of all the major equipment for my unit. Each division owned their specific equipment, and as a whole the department maintained quite a bit of administration for this equipment. Run hours, maintenance logs, hourly readings for every gauge and meter, etc. were kept on paper. I mean a lot of paper. Being as it were, the people under my charge had developed an efficient system where about a ream of paper's worth blank forms were pre-made and marked with yellow highlighter and ready to copy each day to make the forms for the next day. Fun fact, markings made in yellow highlighter will not transfer to the copies when fed through a copier. On the day in question, my division was responsible for making forms for the next day's use. However, the auto document feeder for the copier had broken. Now in the military, there's no such thing as established working hours. No picking it back up the next day. You work until the job is done, whether it's noon or midnight, and you start fresh the next day. So there's obviously a lot of incentive to get the job done, and done right, lest you get called back in to fix it, so that you can go home. Being there periods of time where you are deployed and home is a barracks halfway round the world. When you weren't deployed, time home was something to be valued at the end of a workday. I took a look and this copier was on its last leg. The plastic was completely busted, and there were obviously multiple previous repairs made to lengthen its life. However, the copier's wounds were now clearly terminal and no additional life could be afforded with any amount of ingenuity. As it were, I declared a do not resuscitate, and sent someone to requisition a replacement. Upon return, I was informed that the supply officer had denied my request on the grounds that manual copies could still be made using the document glass, one document and one side at a time. Cue malicious compliance. Now before I finish, I want you to remember that 1. I don't take shit from anybody, 2. My department was using this copier daily for 500 plus documents, 3. This would directly impact the amount of time people had with their families, and 4. I wasn't about to let shit travel downhill to people under me. I lugged this copier into the supply officer's quarters along with a sledgehammer. Wouldn't you know it, but upon seeing it up close, and its innards all over the floor, the supply officer not only agreed that a replacement was in order, but approved the transfer of a seldomly used copier from another department. Sure, I got a talking to later, but in the words of Lt. Aldo Rain, I've been chewed out before. Story 3. Want to fry your own pancakes? Sure. I'm someone who loves to cook, and sometimes I make food for my family. I cook a lot, and I'd say I'm fairly decent at it. One morning I was preparing to make American pancakes when my mom walks in the kitchen. She gets excited about the pancakes, but tells me to save some batter so that she can fry her own pancakes. She wants them to be perfect. My dad usually fries them, and he's a master. I've learned from him, but my mom has no idea how to fry American pancakes. I follow her request and finish cooking the rest of the batter. I serve up the pancakes I've made, and they're perfectly golden brown and fluffy. Now it's her turn on the stove, and she soon realizes her mistake. She can't get the temperature right, uses too much oil and flips them way too late. Hers turn out burnt and flat, and everyone else is finished eating by now. Safe to say she wanted my pancakes in the end. Smiley face. Story 4. Malicious compliance by all the students caused the whole school to reek. This is an old story I had forgotten about until just now. Ah, the nostalgia. It happened when I was in middle school, about 2010. A bit of context: I live in an old rural town, not in the U.S. The only middle school in this town used to be a nursery, the kind where plants and trees are grown or sold, not a medical nursery. Most of the trees weren't cut down when the place became a school, and a few of them were fruit trees, 3 or 4 of them were mango trees. Us kids loved taking them home by the bunches to enjoy with our families or eating them during lunch and breaks. Occasionally some kids would try throwing rocks or sticks at the tree branches to make some mangoes fall. One of the teachers didn't like this. Understandably, throwing rocks could be dangerous, but nobody was throwing them at each other, and they were careful looking around for any people passing by as to not hurt anyone. The most logical thing to do would have been to forbid students from throwing things at trees, but instead the school passed a rule that any students caught picking up mangoes, whether they be on the floor or trying to get them from the trees, would get in trouble or even face suspension. We all thought it was a dumb idea, but me and a few other students could smell the eventual disaster from a mile away, so nobody protested and everyone at school agreed to comply, even the kids who were known to be rebellious. Well, about a month or so later the whole school was absolutely stinking of rotten mangoes, and for those of you who don't know, mango season usually peaks during early spring and late summer, plus in the state we're in, rainy season hits in summer. So imagine old rotting mangoes in muddy water puddles that sit for days at a time in the summer heat. Not a good combination of smells. The teachers by that point told us that if we see a mango in good condition to be eaten we could pick them up. But we couldn't possibly break the new rule that was imposed by our respectable teacher. We must obey like the good students we are. The school had to pay a clean-up crew to dump all the rubbish, and some of the parents, my mom included, complained about the wastefulness of perfectly edible fruit. The next school year we were all enjoying delicious mangonadas, which is mango-flavored ice pop with a spicy sweet sauce, under the lovely shade and those good OL summer breezes. Said ice pops were made and sold by a classmates. The teacher that had originally started the complaints was a loyal customer. LOL. Story 5. Taxi troubles or please don't mess with my pay. Figured this story would qualify as a post of its own. I used to drive a taxi cab. There are rigid and somewhat complex rules regarding driving time for occupational drivers. We logged ours in a notebook, for some reason nicknamed the story book. Our driving time with a particular car was also logged electronically within that cab. The funny thing was that it was the cab, not the driver, who had a schedule. If you changed cab during your workday, you also switched to that car's schedule. Still, the driver had a limited amount of hours he was allowed to drive each day/week/fortnight. Keeping track of this could be a bit of a challenge if you jumped between cabs. However, going over the limit was very bad as it could bring enormous fines and suspensions. We would regularly get called out for early morning or late night airport or train station transfers outside of our shifts. These would typically take 45 minutes unless we had to do more than one transfer. We were paid 2 hours wages for this, the difference being our call-out bonus. As this was mostly in time and a half hours, it was more like 3 hours pay for 3/4 hours work. On weekends and holidays it was even more. Our dispatchers, affectionately nicknamed switch witches, were the ones who were supposed to keep tabs on how many cars were needed and when which car could punch out and go home. One of the dispatchers would constantly give us extra fares or keep us around for school transfers in the morning, while sending some of the guys on ordinary shifts home early. When I noticed the pattern, I asked her why. "What does it matter? You're paid for 2 hours. And more fares means you are making more money." "No, dear. It means my boss is making more money without having to give me compensation for it. You are peeing away my call-out bonus." Stupid bint. I suggested solving the issue by letting us drivers tack on 75 minutes to whatever time we were out, but it was shot down because change equals bad. Instead, the dispatcher was told to keep better check on who was on shift and who was an extra, and who among the extras was an employee and who was an owner-operator, and send the employee extras home as soon as possible. Things didn't improve much after the misunderstanding was addressed, because she also sucked at her job. Here is where I decided to engage in malicious compliance. On the call-outs, I stopped asking how much longer she needed me. I just remained logged on, accepting fares, letting the hours tick up. A few times she noticed and sent me home, other times I kept on driving into my afternoon shift. Then came Friday night. The first one after payday. The biggest taxi night of the month. We were gonna make so much money. 8:30 in the evening, as things are slowly starting to get wild, I radio dispatch. "Dispatch, I'm going to log off and bring in the cab." "Why, are you having trouble?" "No, I'm just out of hours." "What?" No, you're scheduled until 5 a.m. There's a crapload of fares waiting." "Sorry, someone else is going to have to take them." I logged out, garaged the cab, and went home. I had a nice relaxing evening and my boss lost a shitton of money. Afterwards, he wanted to know what happened. I explained that this was the result of the problem I had been addressing. Switch keeping me on the clock, using up my driving hours, and bonus, but I didn't mention that this time, resulting in me running out of hours. Nothing I can do, since it would mean breaking the law. The fines would be substantially bigger than the profit he had lost. The next time I had a call-out fare, I was told I could log out and go home before I even had dropped off the customer. TLDR, stupid bint pes away my call-out bonus. Boss fails to deal with problem, I maliciously follow the rules and let her squander my allotted driving time. My boss's cab doesn't roll on the busiest night of the month and heaps of money are not made. That's all for today. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.